Welcome to the NZ Travel Show, an interactive show where you can ask your NZ travel questions to the experts behind nzpocketguide.com, New Zealand's largest travel guide. The NZ Travel Show will start in exactly 2 minutes. Just the time for you to hit the like button, ring the notification bell, and subscribe if you have not done so yet. nzpocketguide.com has over 3,000 articles covering all aspects of travelling in New Zealand, from a working holiday gap year to tips for a perfect family holiday. The site also features dozens of pre-made itineraries that you can use to plan your ideal trip in New Zealand. It's all available for free at nzpocketguide.com, so check it out. The NZ Travel Show is hosted by Robin, the Operations Manager of South Pacific Pocket Guide, the company behind nzpocketguide.com. The New Zealand Travel Show is also hosted by Laura, a journalist and editor-in-chief of South Pacific Pocket Guide and all its publications, including nzpocketguide.com. We're exactly 1 minute away from the NZ Travel Show. Get yourself comfortable and start asking your NZ travel questions in the chat. Robin and Laura will go over them when the show starts. In 30 seconds, our experts will be live from New Zealand to give you all the practical New Zealand travel tips you need, from the best transport options to the best accommodations and activities to choose for the perfect New Zealand holiday. Live from New Zealand, this is the NZ Travel Show with your travel experts, Robin and Laura.
Good morning, everybody. How is everybody doing? It is Sunday, the 21st of January 2024, and it is 8 a.m. in New Zealand, and this is the NZ Travel Show. We're talking about everything that there is to know about traveling in New Zealand. If you're planning an upcoming trip to the country, well, you may as well ask the expert behind New Zealand's largest travel guide. That's us. And we'll help you plan the perfect holiday in beautiful Aotearoa, New Zealand. So happy days. Come in, ask your questions, come and hang out with us. We have a theme this week, as every week, so we kind of talk a little bit about a theme. I think the thumbnail for the video this week's pretty cool. I'm pretty pleased with it. I'm really happy with what I instructed the AI to do.
That was done by AI?
No, I was painting it myself, obviously, with my little, didn't you see me with my watercolor? That's me, of course, yeah. Oh, happy days. So we have Anthony Comstock here in the chat.
Yes, he's saying Morena from Rodeo, California. What does Morena mean, Robin?
Morena means good morning in Maori, which is the local indigenous language here in beautiful New Zealand. So the way that show works is you ask us all your questions in the live chat, or if you're watching a replay, just put them in the comment of this video. And yeah, we're here to answer all your questions. But in the meantime, we'll just go over a bit of a theme of the week. So we need some music. Yeah. What's the music?
That.
The music. No, the music doesn't want to work. All right, the music works.
That wasn't painful.
No, that wasn't painful at all. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the best and the worst phone networks in New Zealand. So spoiler alert, there's only about 3 networks in the country. There's a lot of different brands, some brands reselling networks and reselling kind of pre-bundled package on selected networks, but there's 3 main networks in New Zealand. We'll try to kind of explain the whole industry in the country. We have extensive experience with all of the different operators. We've been in New Zealand for Laura a little over a decade, me over 1.5 decades. And so therefore we have used a lot of them and a lot of the different companies as well. So we'll share our experience with that as well. But we'll also base ourselves on a lot of facts. So we've done a lot of research on coverage, on quality and everything. And we'll talk about all of that today in details. And finally, we'll also talk about pricing, and we'll discuss what are the best options for travelers like you. Ooh, my voice went nuts. All right, without further ado, let's get started with a bit of a clickety-click. I will find a little clickety-click.
Any moment.
Yeah,
now.
no further ado. Where is the further ado? Is it, can you see the further ado right here? No.
Have you found the further ado?
Have you found it? All right. So we thought we'd begin with a little bit of the terminology, just some of the words that we're going to be using throughout this video so you know what we're talking about. Most of them, you're probably familiar with them already from, your experience with cell phone providers back home, but just in case, here are a few words that you need to know. So let's get started with prepay, Laura. What does it mean?
Yeah, so prepay is basically the opposite of being on a contract. So it tends to be, a type of phone plan that you can opt in and out of. You're not sort of stuck with it for a year like contract plans are.
Okay, so you just use the word plan. What does plan mean?
So plan is a sort of general term for an offer that a phone provider provides. So it's usually, we'll get onto this next term, but it's usually like a bundle or something like that. So it's they have different plans which will have different things involved.
And they're offered monthly.
Yes.
The next item on the list is combos. So is that different than plans?
So sometimes combos is another term that some phone providers use, which is essentially the same as a plan, but sometimes they could be offered weekly. They tend to be a little bit smaller in terms of their offering. So while plans might be like a monthly thing, which is kind of comprehensive plan of all that you'll need for the month, combos tend to be like smaller, cheaper plans that might not have as much, say, data or minutes, etc.
And they're often offered when you are using your phone as a pay-as-you-go. It's an alternative to it. So you use your phone as pay-as-you-go, or you use your phone with a combo. With that in mind, what does pay-as-you-go mean?
So pay-as-you-go is essentially just you pay for every MB, every minute and every text that you use. So in other words, the phone providers in New Zealand will charge you standard rates. So they have standard rates per MB, per minute, per text.
And finally, what's an add-on?
And an add-on is if you want to have like a little bit extra onto your phone plan, or even if you're paying as you go, if you just want, say, I just want 2 gigabytes of data that will last a day or whatever, they usually have little add-ons like that to sort of, just give you a quick amount of stuff for a good price.
All right, so just to recap all that, so usually when you're going to be getting a cell phone in New Zealand, you're either going to be on a plan, which is often a monthly plan, and this usually have a contract term, which is going to be 12 months or such. Or you're going to be on a prepay model, which means that you have to either top up your phone through an app, or you can buy those prepay voucher from your supermarket or the local convenience store, which in New Zealand we call the dairy. Sorry. When you are on a prepay, you often are either on a pay-as-you-go, which means that your amount of money that you have topped up, so added to your prepay plan, will be deducted for every minute plan or every minute megabyte or SMS you are using. Or you can use that money from your prepay plan to buy a combo. That combo will be basically a bundle of a certain amount of minutes, megabyte or SMS. On top of that combo, you usually can get an add-on, which is basically adding extra to that combo. So that's just to explain all those terms by itself. Now, lastly, the thing that I want to explain before we get started is when are you getting charged for your phone in New Zealand?
So usually you are paying before. If you are on a prepay plan, you're usually, as Robin says.
So you prepay.
Exactly. So as Robin says, you top up your phone, whether that's through the app of your chosen phone network, or you're going to the supermarket and asking to top up your phone there, or, doing it online through the website. So you're putting a certain amount of money into your, like topping up your phone by a certain amount of money, and then basically you use that money from there. So you're always paying before using it. You know, you always pay by the amount of credit that you have put into your phone.
All right, so that wraps up our quick terminology. Now we're going to start diving into more of the phone network and information you need to know for New Zealand. Let's go back to the live chat before that.
Yes. Oh, you found the button.
Yes, I found the right button. Adil is here saying, Kia ora, Robin, Laura, and all the viewers. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Adil.
Welcome.
Welcome on board. All right. Yeah, so again, you guys can ask us all your questions about traveling in New Zealand. Don't be shy. There's 13 of you right now watching us. 3 likes, 13 people. 10 of you are hating what you're watching. That's fine. I appreciate that. But yeah, ask us all your questions about traveling in New Zealand. We are going to continue our coverage about the phone network right now. Boom. All right, so just before we start talking about the different prepaid plan and postpaid plan and all those kind of things, I want to talk about the different network providers in New Zealand. So in New Zealand, there are 3 main providers, namely Sparks, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ, which is
Spark without an S at the end.
Spark, 2 Degrees with the S, and 1NZ, which is formerly Vodafone. Then you have some providers which are using the network of other companies. Those can include Skinny or Warehouse Mobile, etc. So within this entire video, we're going to be comparing all the different SIM card, all the different plans and everything. And let's begin with the best pay-as-you-go plans in New Zealand. Go for it, Laura.
Yeah, so if you, for instance, you get yourself a SIM card from your chosen phone network and you top it up with credit and don't select a plan, you don't select a combo or anything like that, you just have the SIM card ready to go, then you will be charged standard rates. So it means you'll be charged a certain amount for the amount of data you use, the per MB, per minute, and per text. So Robin can go through the different charges for the current prices as of the beginning of 2024.
Exactly. Yeah, that may change. Just putting that out. All right. So let's start with the main network providers in New Zealand. So Spark without an S charges you 59 cents per megabyte, 89 cents per minute, and 20 cents per text. 2 Degrees with an S charges you 50 cents per megabyte, 49 cents per minute, and 20 cents per text. And 1NZ charges you 50 cents per megabyte, 49 cents per minute, and 20 cents per text. When it comes down to the other operators, which are basically reselling different networks, we're going to take only a couple of examples throughout these videos, namely Skinny and Warehouse Mobile, but there are many other providers as well. We just can go through all of them, in this one short video. So Skinny will charge you 40 cents per megabyte, 40 cents per minute, and 20 cents per text on your mobile standard rate. And the Warehouse Mobile, we couldn't find actually your casual rate for megabytes, so I don't know if that's available or not, but then it's 16 cents per minute and 16 cents per text. Please keep in mind that all the price that we're giving you right now are text and calls in New Zealand, and in some case in Australia, and all the prices that we're giving you right now are New Zealand dollars. So when you are on those standard rates, you can also buy yourself combos, which are basically bundles of minute and text, and that usually comes down to visibly cheaper, and we'll cover that a little bit later. All right. Next up, we're going to be talking about the best phone plans. But first, let's go back to the live chat. What is Mayank saying?
Mayank says, hi, thanks for all your videos and information on New Zealand, which is a good car rental company near the Auckland airport. We will be reaching at 11:40 p.m. Will it be too late to pick up a car?
So if you're landing at 11:40 p.m., you are probably not going to be picking up your car at 11:40 p.m. So it would be smart for you to actually book the car for the next day. So let's say, 1 a.m. or something like that, because it's still going to take you a certain amount of time to actually go through all the airport arrival. If you watch our video about airport arrival, for example, we did that live. So it was a real-time video of like what happens when you're about to get off the plane, right? And so that took us literally an entire 1 hour of the live show, and we actually did shorten the section on the biosecurity at the end. So first thing first, save yourself an entire day of rental by booking your car for like 1 a.m. on the next day. That's the first thing that I will say. Then there is obviously a lot of different car rental companies nearby the Auckland airport, and in fact we have a video about that.
Do we have a video?
Yeah, we have a live show that we did about car rentals, don't we?
You mean last week when
Yeah.
we talked about it?
Yeah.
We don't talk about specific car
No,
rental
we do not,
companies,
yeah.
but yeah, we do have information, general guide
Yeah.
that we did in last week's video. So do make sure you look at that for extra tips. But in terms of car rental companies, most of the major car rental companies in New Zealand do operate out of the Auckland airport. Or at least they have a depot nearby where they offer transfers to their depot. So you do have a lot of options when it comes to car rentals from Auckland, which is great. It means that you have probably one of the widest choices of car rentals in New Zealand. Robin is putting a link in the comments for you, Maniac, so you can do a comparison yourself with all the information that we're providing here. Obviously, we don't have time to go through the pros and cons of them all now, but
But what about if we pick one of them, for instance?
Yeah, so for instance, Bargain Rental Cars is a good company to go for. They do offer car rentals from the Auckland airport, which is great. They also offer a courtesy shuttle to take you to and from the airport, so they can actually drop you back off at the airport after you drop off your vehicle if you are dropping it off in the same location.
And what I'm going to say with them is that Bargain Car Rental has a $30 fee to pick up their car from the airport, but because they're one of the cheapest in New Zealand, that definitely offset it. Like obviously if you're about to rent the car for only a couple of days, that doesn't make sense. But if you're renting a car for a week or more, they're still significantly cheaper than a lot of others.
Yeah. So yeah, they're good. They're sort of like a good, well-priced car rental company to go for. They do include multiple drivers as well, which is nice. There's a lot of car rental companies that will charge per driver.
Yeah.
They also, I don't know how old you are, Maniac, but they also allow 18...
I think it's Mayank.
Mayank, sorry.
Maniac is a bit of a...
So they do offer car rentals to 18-year-olds and up, so it's great for younger drivers as well. So yeah, and obviously all the roadside assistance is included. They have basic insurance included, all that good stuff. So they're just a good sort of all-rounder car rental company to go for that's not too expensive either. In terms of picking up car rentals outside of the usual working hours, just always check. There possibly will be an extra fee for picking up a vehicle outside of normal working hours. So yeah, make sure that you are aware of that, and there may be an extra fee if you are picking up the car at an unusual time.
All right, that was exhaustive, but yeah, if you have any extra follow-up question, Mayank, let us know.
Yeah, and have a look at the link that is in the chat right now, and that will go through lots of different options because there really is a lot to choose from.
Yeah. Okay, Adil says, which of the phone networks mentioned is the most popular? I actually wouldn't be able to know which one is the most popular, which one has the most clients, right? But we'll talk about the difference in coverage around the end of the video, and I think that's gonna really help understand that. But right now we're just focusing on like pricing, just so people understand how much it will cost.
Just because something's popular doesn't mean it's necessarily the best option to go for. So
look, we're not popular on YouTube, but you still decide to ask us questions, and we're the best, right?
Yeah. So I wouldn't base any decision on what the masses are doing. As awful as that sounds, but I always think like it's always good to go for the option that is right for you specifically, rather than just going for what other people tell you, because it might not always be the best option for different scenarios.
Hello, Rick. How are you doing, my friend? Rick is one of our lovely Patreon subscriber, and yeah, we did some decent work for him this week, helping him out start the beginning of his working holiday. There was a bit of a hiccup, and we sorted that out. So yeah, it's pretty good. If you guys want our support for planning your trip in New Zealand, join us on Patreon. There's a link in the description of this video. We do a good job for you guys. Okay, Mark D. What is Mark asking, Laura?
Mark says, "Hi guys, I'm going to be mostly in NZ, but we'll have a short trip over to Australia on the same trip. What advice do you have for any phone service that gives local numbers in both countries?"
So one of the really good thing about phone networks in New Zealand and Australia is that they are quite compatible with each other. So when you hop onto a country like Australia, or for us, like we go a lot to the South Pacific countries, what happened is that if you are activating roaming in your settings, if you haven't and you go overseas, it's too late and that doesn't work. So before you leave the place that you purchase your phone from, activate roaming in your settings. Now, when that has happened, when you arrive, for example, in Australia, you receive a text from your carrier saying, "Hey, looks like you're in Australia now. Here's your options for like some bundles that you can get." So you can get like a 7-day bundle or a 3-day bundles. And they obviously are significantly more expensive than the normal ones. But, you know, like for example, I'm with Skinny, right? And so when we go to places like Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, those kind of places, I think our combo costs us about $15 per 7 days. And it's obviously reduced the amount of stuff that you get out of it, but that still helps you stay in touch and everything, and it works very well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And also the good thing to note about New Zealand phone networks is that when you're in New Zealand, obviously this is only when you're in New Zealand, their minutes, say if you get a phone plan with minutes involved or text involved, then that also most of the time includes Australian numbers as well. So you can, if you do need to make phone calls over to Australia, then that's included in your minutes. That's like the one exception to, like, otherwise if you were calling other international numbers, you would get charged something different, but usually it's included in your minutes if you're calling over to Australia from New Zealand.
Mayank seems happy. Thank you so much for the information, he says. No problem. Feel free to join us on Patreon if you want more of our support, if you want us to check your itinerary and all that. It's a lot of fun and it's very cheap. Basic, which is back another week. Basic is becoming regular right here. I love it.
Welcome back.
Basic says, which brand is the best for data? Around the end of this video, we're actually going to go over all the coverage and all those data information. So stick with us for a few more minutes and we'll cover all that for you. We have it prepared in the notes for you, my friends. Speaking of being prepared, let's transition to talking about the best phone plans for data in New Zealand. Ta-da!
Here it is.
So yeah. So if you're planning on using your WhatsApp, Facebook, FaceTime, etc., and you want to rely mostly on phone data in New Zealand, here is some comparison with the specific settings as follow. We want something that has a minimum of 60 minutes calls, because still calling is important, unlimited text, and at least 2 gigabytes of data. Laura, go for it.
Yeah, so if you want, so there's a good plan with 2 degrees, which is 3 gigabytes of data. It includes 300 minutes, unlimited text, and that's $30 per month. For 1NZ, which used to be called Vodafone, they have a bundle which is 2 gigabytes of data, 100 minutes, unlimited text, and that's $23 per month. With Spark, if you get something similar, which is 2 gigabytes, 300 minutes, and unlimited text, that's around $30 per month. With Warehouse Mobile, they do a little bit more data, 3 gigabytes worth of data, unlimited calls, and unlimited text. And that's for about $25 per month. And then finally, Skinny, they do a bundle which is 2.5 gigabytes, 300 minutes, unlimited text. And the price is around $27 per month. And all of that is in New Zealand dollars.
And of course, when we talk about minutes and calls, as per the previous segment, we are talking in New Zealand and sometimes in Australia. All right, next up, we will talk about the different plans for phone calls in New Zealand. And after that, we'll move on to coverage. If I'm correct, we'll talk about the different coverage of each of the networks. All right, so we're going 2 places on the list. What are they asking?
We're going to places on the list. Oh, places on the list. Yes, that's the name of someone. Okay, cool. Do you know what network T-Mobile uses for their roaming? I guess also there'll be T-Mobile in various different countries as well. So yeah, I am unsure.
My
which
gut
one
feeling is Spark. For some reason, it seems to ring a bell, but I'm not 100% sure at all. So no, the correct answer is no. We do not know what network they're using for their roaming. And to be fair, we strongly advise most travelers to not use mobile roaming when traveling in New Zealand. And it's extremely expensive, and getting as we're talking about, like prepay a SIM card is very, very cheap in New Zealand. Like all the plans that we're talking about right here all last for a month, right? So you can get away with $27 for a whole month. That's more than what you need for the entire month. So why spend that much money?
Yeah, and it's usually
that much more on roaming.
Especially a better option for being able to use the internet on your phone, because Wi-Fi in New Zealand, although it's pretty extensive, at least Wi-Fi is available in most accommodations. Elsewhere, it can be a pain to get a hold of Wi-Fi. If you want to rely on it for, if you're using GPS, you're loading, searching things on the go and stuff like that, then that can be a little bit tricky in New Zealand, just relying on Wi-Fi. And if you're using roaming and using that for your data, for searching up things, like researching things, or, where am I going for my next stop and stuff, then that's where, roaming gets really expensive. And that's why we generally tend to say, definitely get a New Zealand SIM card to lower those costs. So we do strongly recommend that you do that. But unfortunately, we cannot answer your question which network T-Mobile uses for roaming.
Mayang says, what are the special things to purchase from New Zealand and bring to my country apart from souvenirs? I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that question, but yeah, we get good honey. We've got some, cool merino wool items.
Like typical New Zealand gifts, I guess, would.
Well, he doesn't want souvenirs, so they don't want souvenirs.
Apart from souvenirs, yeah.
I don't understand what you mean. Can you please explain your question so we can give you a proper answer? I think that's going to be easier. If you kind of reformulate your questions a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay, Rick says, do you have any idea why the mobile data is on the lower side? So first up, the first plan I ever had in New Zealand included 200 megabytes of data. So that is pretty awesome what we're talking about right here. But that just dates me more than anything. So I can be very, very frank with you, my friend. The reason why the data is on the lower side is because New Zealand was so isolated. At the beginning, we only had one cable that brought data to New Zealand, and therefore the amount that was available was quite limited. It's not the case anymore. However, because the big companies, the big threes, educated the customers to only have access to very small amount of data for low prices and can charge very, very big premium to get higher data, they just can't get away with it. And as you can see, every time we talk about prices, they're all extremely similar. They're just all basically, they don't legally collude, so they can't get sued, but they really, really, really much follow each other on pricing and make sure that, nobody is really kind of rocking the boat too much. Some of them advertise being significantly cheaper than others, but it's not really the case, or they're owned by the same company, etc. So they just, because those big corporations can get away with giving you very little and charging you a high amount for it. That's just basically what it is.
The New Zealand population is used to having low amounts of data on their plans, and therefore nobody kicks up a fuss. They'll still keep on buying their plans. Yeah. So why would the companies change that when, and when people are running out of data, then they're just always going to buy more of those bundles and, more of those add-ons. So unfortunately, that is just capitalism for you, my friend.
Yes. All right. So speaking of capitalism, let's continue with our coverage right here. And now we're going to be talking about the cheapest phone plans in New Zealand. So if you're on the budget.
Yeah, let's just go for the cheap stuff.
Do you want to introduce it and I'll go through the numbers?
Sure. So, we just basically chose some of the plans from each of the phone networks that we've been talking about so far. Just basically, the cheapest plans tend to have like the smallest amount on offer. So typically a minimum of like 50 minutes calling, 50 texts, and maybe around 250 megabytes of data, which actually, there are some plans that are like that. So we went for the cheapest, but still a plan available for each of the phone networks. So take it away, Robin. All
right, let's see what we have on offer right here. So if you start with Spark, we have 1.25 gigabyte of data Brace yourself, that's the highest amount of data you're going to get in those cheap plans. So 1.25 gigabyte of data, 200 minutes and unlimited text, and that would be $20 per month.
Yeah, and that's literally the cheapest plan that Spark offers.
Yeah. Then for 1NZ, we're going to have 250 megabytes of data, 100 minutes and 100 text for $13 per month. On 2 degrees, you're going to have 250 megabytes of data, 100 minutes, unlimited text for $10 per month. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you know, those things that resell those 3 networks, Warehouse Mobile will have 300 megabytes of data, 100 minutes, and unlimited text for $9 per month. And Skinny Mobile will offer you 250 megabytes of data, 100 minutes, and unlimited text for $9 per month. Again, minutes of calling and text are for New Zealand and sometimes Australia, but mostly New Zealand. And yeah, all the prices are in New Zealand dollars. Next up, we're going to be talking about the best phone plans if you want to be able to call overseas as a tourist. I know that this can be a consideration for you, so we'll cover that soon. What's happening in the live chat, Laura?
Okay, so we have Mayank saying, oh, sorry, that was the same thing. And they were saying, sorry, you may include suggestions for souvenirs as well.
So we actually have a full video. If you type souvenirs and then Z Pocket Guide on YouTube, you'll find a whole video of us talking for an hour about different souvenirs and stuff. So it's kind of fun. Or I will give you, while Laura give you a couple of ideas, I will also give you a bit of a link on our website.
Yeah, so as Robin was hinting at before, a big thing that New Zealand produces, or a very, you know, a nice sophisticated food item is Manuka honey, which is said to have all sorts of health benefits and also just makes a nice sort of premium gift for people that's quite small also to carry in your you know, to take back home. So Manuka honey is a good one. Just also make sure that your biosecurity back home accepts honey from overseas. I know that some countries, especially as we know in the South Pacific, usually you can't you know, import honey from overseas. So just make sure that's allowed for your country. Other things, there are certain, you know, brands of chocolate in New Zealand, specifically Whittaker's is
chocolate?
is specifically, you know, a big brand in New Zealand that a lot of people get really addicted to while they're traveling here. So that can be a nice way to sort of pass on the addiction to your family members back home. Another item, if you want to go, you know, something a little bit more premium, would be jade pendants or necklaces or jewelry. So in New Zealand, there's a special stone that is especially significant to the Maori culture called greenstone. Another word is jade, or punamu, which is the Maori word for it. Obviously pronounced much better than what I just did there. But yeah, there's beautiful carvings made with, you know, Maori sort of designs and things. So that's another really popular souvenir or gift that you can bring home from New Zealand. So there's a few small ideas, but as Robin said, we do have a full video on this channel. So if you just search souvenir and NZ Pocket Guide on YouTube, you should be able to find that pretty easily.
All right, so let's continue with our phone coverage, best phone network coverage. All right, so next up, the best phone plans for calling overseas. So calling overseas is not included on most plans, combos, or anything like that, with the exception of a few countries with a company called Warehouse Mobile. But since everybody wants to be able to use Skype, FaceTime, Viber, Facebook, all those kind of things, you can still call back home with data. That said, if you want international phone calls, including in your plans, here are some of your options and things you need to know.
Yeah, so look out on your chosen phone network for specifically overseas add-ons or international add-ons that they might be providing. For instance, Skinny offers an international add-on which is around 300 minutes to 20 selected countries for around 10 New Zealand dollars. Spark offers something similar, around 200 minutes plus 100 text to 20 selected countries for around $10. So when you're purchasing those international add-ons, also make sure that the countries that you want to contact are actually included in the list, because that's always the kicker as well. Also, Warehouse Mobile, they actually include 14 international destinations in their standard plans, which can be a nice option for people wanting to call specific countries back home. So shall I go through the countries, or?
No, you don't need to.
Yeah, so you can check that out.
There is a link in the description of this video where we actually go through everything, so we don't have to go over every single country's fire.
Yeah.
All right, so Laura, a bit of a blast from the past. How about calling cards? Is that still a thing in New Zealand?
Yeah, they actually are.
I know, it's so surprising. We still see them in
I've never
stores.
used one. To be honest, I've never used one, but they are they are still available in convenience stores. In particular, you can still find them in basically what New Zealanders would call dairies. Which is the New Zealand word for a convenience store. You can find them on usually on those racks of cards that you're like, what are all these things? There's international calling cards on there. They tend to be kind of, I don't know if they're a great deal, not something we tend to recommend too much, but they're available if you want them.
And finally, if you're planning on calling Australia, right, when you think about international calls, you're only thinking about Australia, well, the good news is that most network will include Australia within the NZ minutes. So just look into it. So many networks do that, including Skinny Mobile, for example. All right, next up, we're going to be talking about all the different network coverage. So the 3 different network, all the different coverage. But first, we're going back to the live chat. Okay, cool. What is Rick saying?
Rick says it is a little bit in the range of this topic. Sometimes your phone breaks, or on the worst parts get stolen. What is the store you guys go to buy a new phone?
So you can buy phones like in many places in New Zealand, right? Let's just make that really clear, right? You can buy phones in... the live chat is refusing to work well. Just give me a second. There you go. All right. So so there is phones in pretty much every store, right? Even on some of the larger supermarkets, you actually can find phones. You can find them in the warehouse. It's like a really big kind of large kind of fits all, like Kmart or something like that. So you can find phone in all those kind of places. You can also find them in each of the different companies' kind of stores. So you can find like a One NZ store, Spark store, etc. So you can go in there and get it, or you can get them online. So I know that you're coming to New Zealand for a certain amount of time as you're on a working holiday visa. I will suggest you actually get one online. There is plenty of online stores that will allow you to buy stuff. So like
you
My
can
TA,
also buy
PBTech, all those kind of things.
Second-hand phones off Trade Me as
Exactly,
well. One thing I would just maybe just warn people about, which sort of took me by surprise when I bought a phone in New Zealand, was the returns policies in New Zealand. I know they were certainly different from the UK, that if you buy like a tech item, you can't necessarily just return it if you're like, if you change your minds. There has to be an actual fault with the item itself, so you can only return it basically if it's broken, not if you're like, turns out I found a better deal somewhere else, so I'm just going to return this phone. You can't really do that in New Zealand, so just bear that in mind. If you do decide to buy a tech item, make sure that you really do want that tech item.
Anthony says, if you are from America, make sure your phone is unlocked, but with a carrier and on the phone itself, or else you'll have a problem. Oh yeah, that's very true, especially with some operators in the US. I agree.
Yeah, we do have an article on nzpocketguide.com which is entitled "Will Your Phone Work in New Zealand?" which goes through the information of unlocking and how to unlock your phone, as well as checking whether your phone is actually on the right frequency for New Zealand as well. That's one thing that can change as you're traveling from different countries. Different phone networks use different frequency settings on their phones, and it can get all very complicated. So we sort of explain all that on a nice handy article on nzpocketguide.com, so make sure to check that out.
What is Mark saying?
Mark says, do all the services now support eSIMs on iPhones? And is it possible to purchase and set up before you arrive?
Mark, you missed out a great week on our Patreon group where we had the whole ordeal with Adrian trying to set up his eSIM before he arrives in New Zealand and all that. So That's very interesting. But long story short, not all the operators accept eSIMs. And is it possible to purchase and set up before you arrive? Not if you don't have your visa just yet. They will require your visa or your ID or those kind of things. So for people which have a visa, such as someone coming on a working holiday, that would work. And yes, that's doable. If you don't have your visa, you'll have to do that when you arrive in New Zealand. But yeah, there is like full, like kind of everybody was posting and helping each other. Armand did a post about eSIM because he sorted that out beforehand, so Adrian was attempting it. Yeah, it was really interesting. So I love our little community over there. Places on the list says
my T-Mobile gives me 5 gigabytes of data at 250k. Oh,
that's the speed.
Yeah, and a free text while roaming in New Zealand in my US plan. Well, that's great as long as you're paying a price you're happy with.
Yeah, as long as it's not an expensive plan you're paying. Yeah, happy days, yeah. Anthony says, I had my phone unlocked with the carrier, but the phone itself was not unlocked. I had to buy another phone, not knowing that it needed to be unlocked. Yeah, so we actually do explain that a lot on the website, but I guess we should stress that even more when it comes down to phones, that you need to unlock it within the settings before you leave, not while you're in the other country, because that doesn't trigger. And also, well, if you are locked in a plan with a certain provider, you do need to get it unlocked in that way. Or you can just buy phones not through carriers, which is also quite handy. Like Laura and I always buy our phones second hand, on like marketplace, like Trade Me, or even sometimes in like tech shop, and they are unlocked, not related to any carrier. And then at that point, you only have to unlock roaming on the phone settings, and that's it. So you can do everything yourself. So keep that in mind. You do need to be able to use your phone overseas by unlocking it. Please remember that. That's a good idea to restate that. So I appreciate the fact you mentioning that, Anthony. All right. Let's move on to the next section of this video, and let's talk about the best networks when it comes down to coverage and all those kind of details. Okay, so as we mentioned before, New Zealand has basically 3 main network providers: Spark, 1NZ, which is formerly Vodafone. I feel like I'm saying that like formerly Twitter, formerly Vodafone, and 2 Degrees. They offer varied level of network coverage and quality, including 5G, 4G, 3G, etc. So Skinny Mobile, for example, will use the Spark network, Warehouse Mobile will use 2 Degrees networks, etc. So if you're considering any other providers than Spark, 1NZ, and 2 Degrees, you may want to look into which network they are using before you're purchasing them. So let's get started by talking a little bit about coverage, and then I'll kind of explain a little bit what those wording means to you. So Laura, take it away first.
Okay, so let's start with Spark. So Spark offers good coverage in most urban and populated areas. They claim to reach around 98% of New Zealanders. But there are some significant areas with less coverage, especially in remote areas of the Coromandel and parts of the West Coast.
Then 1NZ.
Yeah, then 1NZ, they claim to cover 99% of the New Zealand population. So it has 5G live in parts of cities and towns across New Zealand, and it plans to have 4G or 5G everywhere. It currently has 3G in late 2024, apparently. And 2 Degrees, they offer good coverage in many regions, claiming to have mobile coverage. Sorry, my phone's going a bit nuts. Speaking of phones, so yeah, 2 Degrees offers coverage.
2 Degrees is claiming to have.
Sorry,
do you want me to take over?
No, that's fine.
You could, okay, cool.
In 98.5% of places where Kiwis live and work is kind of their wording there.
All right.
And that's in urban areas and some rural areas.
Okay, so just explaining a little bit about those statements right here. So they are a little bit misleading, right? Because, well, the population of New Zealand is extremely concentrated over a few urbanized areas such as Auckland, Christchurch, and Wellington. So therefore, every network you will be able to claim really high percentage of the population kind of covered. But with all of them, you will have some massive swath of areas with very low coverage, including some very popular touristic areas, because, well, a lot of the popular touristic areas are less inhabited places, such as, you know, as Laura was mentioning, the Coromandel and Milford Sound and Mount Cook, etc. Right? So from our experience, having used all three of those companies, despite the fact that Spark says they cover 98% of all New Zealanders, and this being the lowest percentage compared to 98.5 for 2 degrees and 99% for 1NZ, well, we do find that Sparks offers a vastly better experience when it comes down to actually traveling New Zealand and actually getting to some more rural areas. So that's obviously only our experience, but do keep in mind that a lot of those percentages that you're seeing around when they promote that network are, well, worded in a nice fashion, a nice marketing fashion, and not necessarily in a factual fashion. All right, so then let's move on to the quality of call, and internet speed.
Okay, so Spark provides HD plus ultra high definition voice calls. Ooh, and is planning to enhance its 5G coverage. So it's currently the leader in 4G coverage in New Zealand. 1NZ is known, basically it delivers high data speeds, voice quality with Vault Light.
So that's voice over LTE.
And then 2 degrees it tends to score the highest in video experience and games experience to 5G users. So if you're on the 5G areas with 2 degrees, it tends to have good quality there.
So same thing, right? If you think about that, right, that's basically only the small areas of New Zealand that have 5G, which is very limited at the moment. So it's basically only a handful of urbanized area, and then they score higher. That's great, but most tourists are not going to stick around those very, very, small kind of strong coverage areas. So Mark is asking, that's a relevant question. So before we talk about regional coverage, example, do the service have coverage map, and if so, how accurate are they in our opinion? Pretty bad. Some of them are actually very misleading. We were looking at them yesterday with Laura, and what they do. One of them that we saw, which I'm not gonna name, had like just different shades of green, from like basically no coverage to fair to like decent coverage to like good coverage, right? And so it was very hard to actually tell where they actually did not have coverage. So we find them extremely misleading. And also from our opinion, we have been to some places where it clearly stayed on the map that they had coverage, and they clearly did not. So that's why we're putting a word of caution on that. And that's why, after shopping, that's also why we shopped around that much, and that's what gave us the chance to be able to experience all those different networks and then land on the one we're using now. All right, so let's move on with this coverage, section, and let's continue with some examples. So let's talk about Northland.
Yeah, so if you're in Northland, which is the top region of the North Island, they have, all three providers do have really good coverage in most places, but of course, like everywhere in New Zealand, there are black spots in more remote areas. And note that 5G is quite limited in Northland.
All right, so then what about Auckland?
Auckland, obviously being the largest city in New Zealand, their 5G coverage is extensively available there. So you tend to have basically the best internet speeds and coverage that you can find from anywhere in New Zealand within the Auckland region. So that's a good place to be if you want to stay connected.
What about Waikato?
So the Waikato,
which is very large.
This is a large region, basically just below Auckland. It does have good coverage in urban areas. The large towns in that area include Hamilton, for instance. And in most rural areas as well, they tend to be also quite good, being close to Auckland. So yeah, Waikato's generally a good place to be for coverage.
Bay of Plenty.
Bay of Plenty. It has good coverage along the coast, and that's because most of the major towns are located along the coast. You will specifically find 5G coverage in Tauranga and Rotorua.
All right, let's move on to the south end, and let's talk about the super big Canterbury area. It's huge.
Yeah, so obviously Canterbury, that includes the city of Christchurch. So there are phone network providers, specifically 1NZ and Spark, that have 5G rolled out there, so you'll get great coverage in Christchurch. And also 1NZ and Spark do have quite good coverage out into the rural areas, but you will probably find some more limitations, especially with 2 degrees in the more remote regions of Canterbury.
What about Otago?
Otago. So this is a region that encompasses Queenstown and Dunedin, sort of going towards the bottom of the South Island there. And yeah, they have really good coverage, specifically in Queenstown and Dunedin. 5G is getting rolled out with certain providers in those towns, but specifically in mountainous areas, you will find that coverage can be lacking in those areys.
And finally, let's talk a little bit about Southland.
So coverage is good in populated areas, as with the rest of New Zealand. So yeah.
But I think that's where it's the most sporadic when it comes down to non-populated area.
Yeah, so I would say Spark has the most comprehensive sort of coverage of this area, and then 1NZ, and then followed by 2 degrees.
All right, so to summarize a little bit of the coverage and quality of all the different networks in the country, Spark is a pretty solid choice when it comes down to 4G coverage, and they're working a little bit on their 5G coverage network as well. 1NZ, formerly Vodafone's, offers quite a large amount of areas with 4G coverage. And they do some collaboration with SpaceX, so to try to cover more rural areas, but that is still very sporadic and not really widespread just yet. And 2 degrees will be your best choice for video and gaming if you are in a city. So that's basically our kind of experience with the different phone networks in New Zealand. If you do have any questions about phone networks in New Zealand, you can head to the link in the description of this video. There is plenty of articles to help you sort that out and understand a bit more about what the phone network in New Zealand may look like. And if you want to hit like and subscribe to say thank you for all the hard work, it's always a good thing because that makes the YouTube algorithm very happy. With that in mind, we will go back to the live chat. If I can.
Yes.
Boom. All right. Cool. So I did respond to Mark's question during the video. So yeah, we have another 10 minutes with you guys answering your questions if you do have any. Otherwise, we're happy to kind of wrap up this live show right now and move on to our Patreon group call. So that's one of the things that we do with our Patreon. Every week we actually have a Google Meets kind of group call where we all hang out together and chat about traveling in New Zealand, something a bit more personal. We can share also more information about more specific information, recommend specific companies and all those kind of things.
On a case-by-case basis for people, helping people personally as well. And speaking of Patreons, we do have Mature X here saying, Morena.
How are you doing, my friend? Also, let's talk about what's next week's theme. And I can't remember it. I was trying to load it and I cannot figure out how to load it. What do you think is the theme next week, Laura?
Oh gosh.
Random guess, come on.
Is it another city guide maybe?
I have no idea.
We talked about Queenstown, maybe Rotorua or something like that.
We did Rotorua.
We did that.
We're going to talk about the domestic flights in New Zealand, all the network of domestic flights. So
yes.
yeah. That's what we're talking about next week. We'll talk about everything you need to know about domestic flights in the country.
Yeah. Mature X is saying, all good, how are you?
Oh, that's what that means. All good.
It's Kiwi speak for all good.
It's also young people speak right here. I can't follow all those consonants, my friends. That's too hard for me. All right.
But yes, we're doing absolutely splendid on this beautiful rainy summer.
Yeah, it is.
Summer morning.
It is. It is quite a crazy week of weather. It has been stormy.
But on the bright side, it is nice and warm, and I'm enjoying that.
It's too hot. It's planned to be 26 degrees Celsius today, so that's gonna be cooking us right and nice. Yes. All right, well, it looks like everybody has asked their question about traveling in New Zealand, so we'll wrap up a bit of Kiwi and I says. Interesting. So we will wrap up this show and we see you next week where we're going to be talking about all the domestic flights. Everybody have a lovely week and for the Patreons, well, the Patreon call is going to start early today, so happy days.
All right.
Bye-bye, everyone.
See you next week. Bye.